You ever feel like you're walking through a fog? The world spins on, but you stand still. What's real? What's a dream? Are you just a player in a grand, unfathomable game? Will you let the shadows swallow you whole, or will you sit there, begging for it to stop? Curry Barker, hailing from Mobile, Alabama, is a young filmmaker who made his way out to Los Angeles to pursue his career. You may know this guy from his work with the YouTube channel That's a Bad Idea, co-created with his friend Cooper Tomlinson. I was first introduced to him by clips of their videos being plastered all over TikTok. I enjoyed pretty much all of these, and then I stumbled onto another side of Curry. Horror. Specifically, horror filmmaking. He's got a short list of projects to his name, but the one we're going to focus on today is from October of 2023. And man, I wish I would have found this stuff sooner. Before we dive into it, I want to take a brief second to say if you end up enjoying my content, a like and subscribe would be awesome. You don't have to, as I just appreciate you being here and taking time out of your day to hear what I have to say about something I'm passionate about. I'm a small channel as well, so I generally reply to pretty much every comment. Anyway, I've kept you long enough. Why don't we dive headfirst into this incredible short film? Warnings. We open to a shot of a car with a note stuffed in the window that says, "I'm begging you to stop." As we hear a phone call from our main character Sean, recounting an incident where he was almost squished by a white SUV. He closes out his conversation mentioning how he has a new appreciation for living and that he cheated death in that moment. From this conversation, we learn he's headed to a Halloween party at his buddy Kendall's house. Sean comes walking up and notices the note on the car that we've been reading as the audience up until this point. He looks around nervously before hopping in the car and heading out. We cut to the kitchen of the house where Kendall is busy getting things together. Sean is chilling there talking to him, trying to sort through who would have done this. His most logical guess in his mind is Joseph, but Kendall dismisses that, saying it's not something he would do. Sean keeps trying to come up with ideas as to why someone would want to leave a note that weird on his car, while Kendall shifts the conversation to chatter about the upcoming party and getting super jazzed up about Jello shots.
Haley's bringing 50 Jello shots. You hear that? 50. Gonna be freaking crazy, dude.
Sean is having trouble letting it go, but Kendall brushes it off as a Halloween prank. At this point, it's clear Sean is not having a good time, and Kendall is being awfully dismissive, which makes me think, I got my eye on you, Kendall. We cut straight to the post-party goodbyes as we catch up with Sean as he gets behind the wheel. We got him! Take him downtown, boys. This man was about to drink and drive. Not on my watch! Sean pulls the note from his pocket and studies it until he casually glances over at the passenger seat and sees this. Please don't drive your car. A solid advice after a rager, honestly. He heads back into the house where he finds Reagan rubbing trying to help him regurgitate all those Jello shots. Sean brings the new note up to Kendall and fills in Reagan on the whole situation. Reagan says it's probably Joseph. This Joseph guy sounds like he sucks, man. Kendall shuts down the thought, mentioning that he's currently out of town. Determined to figure this out, Sean heads back to the car and writes a response on his own note asking, "To whom am I speaking?" While that goes on, we hear a phone call in the background that made me chuckle, so I'm gonna let that play out for you.
No, Joseph, like I wanna see you alone. Yeah, too bad you're in Seattle because... Well,
I get back on Wednesday.
It's not Joseph.
I just love that scream. So good. Sean makes the correct decision to go ahead and sleep on the couch that night. Well, at least I thought he did. Because in the middle of the night, Kendall shouts at him from the other room, waking him up. In the creepiest way possible, he says,
Let's talk about these notes.
To which Sean obliges, but not without hesitation. Kendall is just sitting there on a love seat, fully decked out in his costume from earlier that night. I'm going to let you listen to this conversation for a bit and then hop back in.
These notes, they might mean something.
What do you mean?
Well, obviously they don't have an origin.
Right. Wait, no, they do have an origin.
Oh, that's right. They do have an origin.
Yeah.
We just don't know the origin.
Right.
Or you don't know the origin.
You know where they
Sean,
came from?
these notes, they might mean something.
You said that.
Who do you know? Who have you aggravated that will want to stop Pose?
Wait, why?
I'm saying I think you have an enemy, Sean. Enemies are dangerous.
That's what I'm afraid of.
Who's your biggest enemy?
I don't know.
You talking to Kyle again?
Who?
Are you seeing Kyle again?
Kendall stands up and walks to the Sean who took the photo and starts beating the shit out of him, while Sean number 1 screams from the couch, begging him to stop, with blood or some other kind of nasty dark liquid pouring from his mouth. It all breaks when suddenly Sean pops up off the couch, waking up from the crazy nightmare. First off, this performance from Cooper Tomlinson as Kendall is so damn creepy. It's perfect. I was going to be typing into the script about how I love the way he responds and speaks, like he's an inner thought process of Sean trying to wrestle with the unknown situation, until I realized that's probably exactly what the intention was. This scene leaves us with a couple questions. Who's Kyle? And being a dream means this was all in his head, right? Well, we're about to find out things might be a bit more complicated than that. That morning, Sean has Kendall walk him to his car. Probably partially to check to see if there's another note so he can prove something is off, and partially because he's freaking the fuck out. Which, Sean, I'm on your side here. As he's driving home, he starts to hear a muffled moaning sound. His grip tightens on the wheel as you can see the panic start to set in, when the sounds are followed by a thumping coming from the trunk of the car. You can see the mix of fear and anger brewing on his face as he tries to decide if this is a practical joke or if something really bad is about to happen. Because remember, so far the only sort of paranormal situation was in his dream. He pulls over and takes a second to steel his nerves. He slowly makes his way to the back of the car as thumps and moans can be heard emanating from the lid. In this moment, he's probably counting himself lucky his key fob can open the trunk, and he pops it open. Now here, I feel most stories would go with the, and the sound stopped, leaving him standing there staring at an empty trunk. But that expectation gets subverted so hard when the trunk starts to bounce up and down on its own as the moans and thumps grow even louder. Everything finally stops for a moment when Sean goes to reach up to close it, but before he can lay his hand on the car, the lid slams itself shut. This is where everything changes. We've transitioned from practical joke to the idea of a mental break in his mind. Something is clearly off, and Sean, very clearly, is starting to snap. He walks through the door to his home on the phone with the police, and he lets them know he's found the notes in and on his car. They ask if there have been any in the house, to which he replies no. This makes the police brush it off, kinda like Kendall did. Kendall, I'm still watching you, and wouldn't you know it? No sooner does he get off the phone and walk into a bedroom does he find, sitting on the neatly pressed comforter, a note that says, "Your mother's name is Harriet." Behind him, the door creaks open on its own. Sean, thinking somebody probably just sneaked out, goes to check. As he makes his way back inside, the door starts closing at a glacial pace, but with enough force that Sean, no matter how hard he tries, can't stop it from moving until it finally latches shut. On the back of the door, another note: "Don't trust death." The panic is real now as he's just taking jab after gut punch of creepy things happening with no explanation, and to top it all off, on the coffee table, he notices a few things. Note papers, an open Sharpie, and a Polaroid photo. the same photo that was taken of him and Kendall in his dream. I'm so locked in right now. I have some theories on what's happening here, but I'll save that for the end. Apparently, Sean had invited Kendall and Regan over for some company. He gives them a rundown of everything that's happened from the time he left. He shows them the photo, and Kendall, doing this thing again, explains it away as a blackout memory from the party and tells him to chill out. Sean walks into the bathroom to try to get a grip, when from the living room he hears a conversation. It sounds like Sean, but Kendall and Regan are calling him Kyle. Kyle goes on a rant about how he's writing notes in an attempt to figure out what's happening when Sean comes marching out of the bathroom. It's just Kendall and Regan sitting on the couch. He confronts the two, asking who they were talking to which both of them look at him confused. He asks them who Kyle is and gets the expected, "I don't know." On the TV behind them is a note taped up. "Don't trust your friends." He points at the note and everyone is now on the "why you fucking with me" vibe. The two on the couch say they just watched him write that note, and he turns it around asking Kendall this.
Why are you fucking with me? Why are you wearing your death costume?
This train is officially off the rails. Kendall is trying to figure out if he's talking to Sean or Kyle, screaming at him. Notably, there are a couple lines that really stand out. Regan hits the first one with, "Do we need to take him back?" And then Kendall asks him who is speaking and says he's gotten worse. Both Kendall and Regan start telling him they're gonna get him help and that the people that can help you, they're gonna look scary because you make them scary. Sean, clearly not handling the situation well, starts freaking out as Kendall starts dragging him outside, likely trying to get him to go with him to some sort of hospital or institution. They tussle their way down the sidewalk to the curb, and in this moment, Sean breaks free of Kendall's grasp and, "Oh, The driver of the car starts cursing and muttering general sounds of concern while Sean makes his way back into the house. The word "no" can be heard moaning through the space, and his neighbor comes running up to the door, pounding on it, saying, "You need to come look at this right now." The neighbor sounds exactly like Kendall, which I'm not sure if that's intentional or just a small crew limitation, but it adds a lot of complexity to the scene when coupled with the door pounding being the exact same rhythm and intensity as what we heard earlier from the trunk scene.
Hey, this is your neighbor. You need to come look at this right now.
Sean, standing there in the dark, trying to catch his breath, watches as Regan does a hauntingly slow motion walk into frame while wearing her mask from the Halloween party. Regan starts moaning, "Take him," as we cut back to Sean where a Reaper scythe and handgun pop into frame. There's a small moment, maybe a frame or two, of bright light that flashes. We cut to the opening shot again of the car across the street and Sean telling the story of his near-death experience. But something is different. This time, current Sean walks into frame, seeing himself move in slow motion towards him. The note on the car still says, "I'm begging you to stop." Sean picks up the note, flips it over, writes something new, and sticks it back on the car. There's no way out. So there is a lot to unpack here. We'll start with giving this guy his kudos. What a wonderful little film. The acting is believable, and I mentioned it before, but Cooper Tomlinson absolutely kills it in his role as Kendall. Haley Fitzgerald and Curry both do a great job in their roles as well, and even Riley Barker made me legitimately laugh in his role as Joseph over the phone. Speaking of Riley, he was the director of photography, which likely means with a small crew, he did the filming. So many of the shots are creepy and unnerving. He does a great job of framing things in a way that captures the feeling they were trying to convey, especially those ethereal unreality type moments. But you probably didn't wait this long into the video to hear me gush over the technical aspects. You want to know my theory on the whole thing, right? Well, strap in, baby. Let's go for a ride. The theory I've heard and read several times is this idea of Sean/Kyle being stuck in a sort of limbo after actually dying in that near-death experience from earlier. The notes are himself trying to rewrite his fate in an attempt to escape, but in the end, the loop remains ongoing and he gives up on trying to fix it, emphasized by the note at the end saying, "There's no way out." In my opinion though, this feels like a clear-cut case of dissociative identity disorder. Sean/Kyle has been writing the notes the whole time. The reason everyone is so dismissive is to avoid confronting the situation. As we hear late in the film, they're saying things that indicate he's been institutionalized before. He's experiencing a break in his reality. It isn't far-fetched to assume he may also be dealing with schizophrenia, which would explain the trippy moments in the film. According to this article, in addition, patients with dissociative disorder have often had a previous diagnosis of a schizophrenic spectrum disorder, between 27 and 41%. This could just be a look into someone's mind as they work through the snapping of their mental railway. I think these are great theories. Both can absolutely explain the events we see play out. As we'll see in more of his work, yes, we will be covering more because it's all so good, Curry is a great storyteller. So because of this, I don't think he would settle on such basic ideas. I feel like everything in here is purposeful, and the idea of adding some hints at insanity just to brush that under the rug is too easy. No, I think there's more going on here. I think the entire video is an abstract look into the idea of guilt. This is going to sound cliche, but it all boils down to trauma and grief. But it's not about Sean. The story is actually about Kendall. One of the first bits of dialogue we get in the video is Sean saying how he was almost killed by a white SUV. And when we look towards the end, Kendall is the one actually hit. It's hard to make out here, but in my opinion, this looks like a white SUV. This detail was given for a reason. Why would that even be written into the opening line if it wasn't needed to add context? Here's how I think it all went. On the night of the party, Kyle and Kendall were walking out of the house, when maybe Kendall trips or they're goofing around and bumps Kyle into the street, or he trips into the street, causing him to get hit by the SUV. Kendall, racked with guilt and horror, sees himself as the reason. This is why we see him dressed as death. From this point on, Sean becomes the embodiment of Kendall's conscience. The opening scene is Kendall's conscience denying the reality of the situation by making up a story about how Kyle leaped out of the way of the SUV like a ninja and survived miraculously, until a little thought bubbles to the surface. A guilty thought. I'm begging you to stop. The guilt wants him to stop denying the situation, to accept the reality. We see Sean pestering Kendall about the note, trying to lead him down the path to explain and realize what happened. Sean keeps asking, who did this? And Kendall, not wanting to face the truth, makes up all sorts of excuses. Excuses being used to downplay the severity of what he's done. He tries to distract himself by talking about other things. As many people do, he turns to alcohol. Beer, liquor, 50 Jello shots. But even in his drunken stupor, Sean keeps pestering him with more notes. His guilt and fear keep feeding him thoughts. Reagan shows up as the logical side of Kendall's thoughts. Call someone. If you need answers, it's sometimes as simple as reaching out for help. They call Joseph, but he doesn't give Sean the answer he's looking for. Sean tries to take it into his own hands and writes down, "To whom am I speaking?" I see this moment as Kendall's guilt trying to get him to admit to his actions, but this causes Kendall to spiral a bit, as we see in the next scene, the nightmare. In this dream, Kendall now tries to reason with Sean. He's essentially trying to find a way to nullify these thoughts. He says, well, obviously they don't have an origin, but deep in his mind, he knows they do. In this nightmare scene, he starts to move the goalposts a bit, shifting the blame from himself and onto Kyle. We see the moment where the photo is taken, which indicates Kendall telling himself that he's figured it out and everything is okay now, at least from his guilty perspective. He can blame Kyle because at the end of the day, he didn't do anything, at least intentionally. They were both drunk, so it's his fault. It's Kyle's fault, and that really pisses him off. We see Kendall attack Kyle in this fit of rage, Why did you have to die, Kyle? It's all your fault. You did this to me. All while Sean sits on the couch screaming at him to stop. Deep down, his mind knows it wasn't Kyle's fault. He wants this to stop. We see Kendall walk out to the car with Sean. Kendall confronts the thought by trying to be dismissive again, saying, "Sure you're using whom right?" The guilt takes over as we see Sean driving the car. The mind now coupling with more anxious pressure as the echoes of thoughts Kendall has tried to hide away beg to be let out. A rapid and explosive moment of emotion is released, symbolized by the trunk of the car shaking violently with moans of sadness and anguish, causing his guilt to reach a fever pitch. After this emotional outburst, Kendall tries to lock his guilt away as we see Sean struggling to keep the door open. A new note appears. Don't trust death. A new thought. Don't trust yourself. Kendall, again trying to ease his mind, distracts himself with alcohol. But no matter of games and booze can keep his conscience from confronting him about what is going on. He brings along his logical side, Reagan, to try to help him calm down. Kendall says no more notes in a desperate attempt to ignore these intrusive rustlings. Another note says, don't trust your friends. The thoughts enter his mind that he shouldn't be trying to explain this away. He shouldn't trust the idea that everything is okay. Kendall finally relents, saying, "You're supposed to die, Sean." To me, this is an allusion to Kendall telling himself, "It should have been me." His logical side tries to reason with him about getting some help. It all boils over when Kendall forces himself into a dark place, attacking his conscience head on as he drags them both out to the street. This moment is so powerful. Kendall is hit by the SUV. He's crushed, destroyed by his own guilt and conscience wearing him down to the point he can't ignore it anymore. This is why we see Reagan, who is supposed to be his logical side, lose her mind. Nothing but his guilty conscience is left. He's screaming at himself from outside the door to come look at what happened, and from the inside his broken logic screams, "Take him." We see Death's scythe, his scythe, move in from out of frame. And from the other side, a gun. In this moment, a bleary picture is painted. A man so racked with guilt, sorrow, and anger fought his demons and lost. There's no way out. I may be reaching with this explanation in theory, but I still feel like it holds water. That ending was dark, sad, and bleak. This short film masterfully crafts an atmosphere of anxiety that lingers after the credits roll. Its chilling storytelling pulls you into a nightmarish reality, exploring themes of trauma that resonate deeply. While it offers an unforgettable cinematic experience, its emotional intensity left me feeling profoundly shaken. It's a gripping reminder of the feelings of guilt and hopelessness and grief. In the shadows of guilt, we often find ourselves trapped in a haunting cycle, where the weight of our regrets becomes unbearable. The mind can transform into a prison, echoing the painful decisions that led us here. In those darkest moments, the allure of escape can feel overwhelming, whispering false promises of relief. This story shows how one can lose to these struggles. But we're reminded this escape is not the end. It's not a way out. I'm going to leave some resources in the description below if you find yourself in this state. Reaching out for help is not a sign of weakness. It's an act of courage and a vital step towards breaking free of the cycle. In the face of despair, we need to remind ourselves that there is always a path to redemption, a flicker of light even in the deepest darkness. We're not alone in our struggles. There's a community ready to embrace us, to listen, and to heal together. We shouldn't live in the ending of this film, but take from it the lessons. Allow yourself to feel. As you confront the profound pain of guilt, let's choose connection over isolation, hope over despair. Life despite its struggles, holds the potential for renewal and growth, waiting for us to take the first step towards healing. And I'm begging you to start. Thank you all for watching, and as always, have a terrifying evening.